Hello everyone. Today's talk is on coordination through abstraction. And so Mr. Within would like to share some of his ideas on how one may work when confronting their abstraction or going into different states of consciousness. This is something which is spoken about very differently in ancient texts, but now needs to be introduced to the modern man because he needs existential clarity. Everyone does. Because that is the beauty of evolution. Now, something that came to my attention very early on when studying the nature of the mind was actually when I remember being very young, and there was this book that we had in our house which was called Mind, Body and Soul, right? And this book was there, and I remember I was like so interested to read this book, and I opened the first page and the whole book was upside down. So the way they had printed it, the cover was at the opposite direction than the manner the text was, right? So what that means, the cover was put upside down. So I opened this book, and immediately there's confusion, gosh. So I opened this book, and as I'm going through it, I realized that our understanding of mind, body, and soul has been through an objective approach, and that's why we are only trusting the body part more than the mind and soul. Because we're trying to have a physical approach, and guess what? The body gets the green light. But the mind gets the unknown light, and the soul is not even considered because it is not real to some people. But consciousness does not have an identification. So for us to really explore abstraction, we must become aware of how throughout the day we are conscious of things, how we know things, and to understand that we are not here to get our meanings from the fluctuation of the external, but rather to observe all that is here, which does not need an internal or external, it's just a present view. As you begin to observe it like this, thought does not need to leave an impression on you. What that means is, if someone walked up to you right now, you would probably ask who they are or whatever, and you'd begin talking, right? But what if a thought just came to you? Would you just have to accept it or push it away? Or would you observe it, learn from the design, and work into opening man's eyes in newer ways? When it is suggested that there is a coordination in abstraction, this coordination must be one beyond your sense of space and time, because you're not trusting this box you're in. You feel there's more than just this box that you're seeing. And this box, in a sense, can be how reality is manifest to you. Illusion is actually profound because it comes from the original being's awareness. So in a sense, we are directly experiencing many things, but we must trust life and the flows it presents us in. So in a sense, let us say how you've experienced life so far has been a certain flow. Just how you've lived and how you've stepped, Now, this present moment, now you're hearing my talk, the flow is still going, but you're here. Now, if you choose to become an idea, to become more of a static image, to give yourself a snapshot experience of your being rather than a movie experience, you begin to see you need to increase the speed. And when you increase the speeds, that's when things get very badass. They change instantly. When there's instant change in manifestation and the being's looking at that, that's that moment where he's not seeing anything, but something is there. And so man's eyes is learning from itself. And so there is a sense of coordination that comes to you in you trusting all the experiences you've had so far, in the sense that you will definitely trust the next one. Because you trust life. Because that is why you exist. If you have come into existence and we are a self-aware being, we are by far the most unique relationship in existential manifestation. This human being, this platform, this plane of existence is fascinating, for you are all of it, for you are the pilot. The pilot, in a sense, knows that when he's flying the plane, he is the plane. He better be aware of the edges of the wings of the plane. Do you know? So you need to have an awareness to this plane of existence, but also realize as a pilot, you are beyond it. As a pilot of consciousness, you are all that can be perceived. But this, of course, has to be cultivated in a way where it's profound to you based on what you've seen. What that means is there's some things you've seen that no one else has seen, and they need to be considered in how you will coordinate yourself. You've had some personal experiences no one might know about. Some people may not understand. The nature of the human design is that we can communicate, we can understand each other, but again, because of the nature of reality changing, we can never be the same. Even though we can have moments where we are experiencing similarity. What that means is, if we say we are all human beings, there's a similarity there. If we say all human beings are breathing, there's a similarity. But if you looked at how each human being is breathing, it's as if there's still free will. People are making decisions. So there is a flux of, there are many layers. On one layer, it's meaningful to do some acts, but on another layer, they're meaningless. So you need to become aware, because states of consciousness are relevant. States of being really means how you're paying attention to this existence, how you are kept. Some beings are immediately aware of what they are handed. And others are looking at other people's hands to see what they have and are comparing what they have. In actuality, your life must be the most exciting life for you, do you know? In other words, you don't need to go see your idol more than you actually need to go see who you are and how you can utilize all that you have with an engineer's vision to design the next presence that will get rid of problems. Sometimes to handle problems, I saw that if I choose to handle it as an individual, as if some guy just trying to, do one little specific thing, it would never be enough. So what needs to be enough is that trust in your nature of being, which then, because you trust your moment of experience, you are always coordinated in abstraction. Because you are aware of where it's coming from and who it's coming to. You are aware of abstraction, and so if you become aware of different states of being, and one state of being is, in a sense, a very silent and still one, you begin to see you don't need to have thoughts to be this agitated. But again, at the same time, life is playing, and there are many flows, So adjust yourself and harmonize with sincerity, I guess. In other words, see what's the most honest act to do and do it. Usually works. And you'll see, because once you develop a certain trust with how reality is present to you, you will then begin to also trust your imagination. Once you see what you're calling normal is one part of the spectrum where you are suggesting some part is insanity and some parts, not even here. It's like the states of being that our mainstream is acknowledging in regards to the human being. It is being, how would I say it? Man must find himself first before he can find anyone else. Because you must raise your consciousness to then see what the act may be. And the act does not sometimes mean sacrifice. Be a savior. Because there's a lot of ideas on sacrifice, and people use sacrifice what you feel needs to, is lesser in value. Do you see? And not that you shouldn't, not that, these are, of course, this is just a manner I'm talking about these things. There are many ways we can talk about these things. But there was this profound understanding that the greatest sacrifice is that of ideology to seeing what your directest experience of this existence is. There are many ways in which manifestation is being presented to you while you're being present. Be aware of it and recognize that your consciousness is nothing to talk about. Do not even make too much stories of it. If internal experiences happen to you, you must see that you must have the trust of self in the sense that you want to learn so much from what is within you that, in a sense, you are not externally creating a value system for yourself. And what that means is when one area is detached, the whole spectrum fades. So when you observe one part of the spectrum, you suddenly, it's as if your state of being moves beyond that projection of reality, beyond that sense of right or wrong. Do you know? What that means, in the wrong crowds, you may feel like a criminal. But in the right crowds, you may actually feel you're saying the right things. But in a sense, you actually notice after a while that we have no judgments on that leaf on the tree crumbling in fall. Why are we bothered by the lack of meaning that the human communicator suggests at times? These are good questions to ask, by the way. That's why I'm bringing it up. To continue, really feel it out. See what you've been given. So you might see that you might think you're not maybe able, or you might think you're incapable, but you'll see you've had certain life experiences that if you just use them as inspiration, you will begin to see that they were states of being. Do you know how many states of being are present in man's sense of reference in regards to how you've been born and how you've grown up so far? There's a lot of wisdom in just how you have lived. That wisdom becomes your coordination because it makes you aware of how abstraction is being originated. Don't just call it your memory. Explore what is your consciousness. For freedom never meant being spoon-fed. Freedom meant you just realize you've been sitting on a very uncomfortable chair for so long, and you just get up and you're like, gosh, why did I make that decision? And you get up and you go look around. You're not deciding. You're not jumping from one idea to something else. You're jumping from an idea into an existential awareness, into a silent clarity. It is a very interesting phenomenon, guys. When I realized that our truth opens different states of being when we observe it in silence and stillness, and of course it's recommended to be in nature, you need to put an effort to see how much this world is integrative. Because, guys, there's a difference. When I was younger, I didn't like nature that much. You know, I barely went out to nature, you know. But when I got close to it and I got rid of my arrogance, in other words, I didn't care, I just went to observe it as my moment was presenting it, it has a beauty which suggests this is information of how life is being done. So the intelligence that is within this manifestation is also to some degree with me, but to a different form, and I'm differently self-aware. But a self-aware presence does not mean that it needs to have a voice. Do you see? And so that is why trees have been the greatest teachers for some meditators. Because they are silent. And in their silence, they do not care about your story. They are here. They are looking at you as if this teacher has nothing to ever say. And that is why he's free. I want you to go to the nearest park, and I want you to, or nature trail or somewhere, and find a tree you like, just you feel. You know, it could be any tree. It doesn't have to look in a certain way. Just feel a certain tree. You know, just go by that tree and put your hand on the bark if you can't reach the branches. But if you can, hold the leaves as if you are like shaking a hand. You know, as if you've just held it in your hand. You know, as if you're holding someone's hand, let's say. And go observe the tree and try to see what a tree would say about its life if it could speak, about how it's here. What would it say? And your observance to this life form will give you a new form of understanding. Fractals were a nice idea, but we don't want to just have an idea. We want to experientially actualize it in this plane of existence. And so, may you find that reality is intelligent, the world around you is intelligent, for you have come out of that intelligence. What that means is the way you are present now is as profound as how any God could be present. And so as you study your presence and your moment of being, you begin to see you would not want to have any more stories relevant to objective views. In other words, you being a certain body or not, you know? A body is just an interpretation of a part of your moment. But when you acknowledge the whole moment, you are not thinking, you're not extracting, you don't have a shovel, you're not looking for something in that sense. You are, in a sense, being present to see what you already know. And that's where a sense of knowing will become profound. Because my intelligence went from being idea-based, so in other words, I would plan things, to suddenly just trusting life to a point where the flows got better. In other words, certain things would happen when you become attentive to your existential responsibilities, you know, which are beyond ideas. You know, ideas come out of it. Ideas are just, they are inspired by your being. You, in a sense, see that interpretation is not just moving in a void. Man's consciousness has intentions which are from its world. And as it trusts its world, its intentions will be fulfilled. So similar to how you perhaps want to stand up, need to use your hand, you need to use one part of your body. As your hand listens to you, your body works properly. Now visualize as if someone's trying to move their finger, you know, and the finger doesn't want to move. You begin to see, why doesn't the finger want to move? Because it thinks it's an individual consciousness. But when it begins to see that it was always kept by the whole body's intelligence, individual consciousness was your playground, was a gift. But also a gift to be open to see that there's an emptiness in that box. Every human being right now hearing my talk needs to just pay attention to these things. I'm not telling you to do something, I'm just telling you to pay attention. Pay attention to how you are physically existing. Go look at your body in the mirror completely. Even though if you don't like it, it doesn't matter. Just go acknowledge your physicality. As you acknowledge your physicality in the mirror, now observe that which is aware of the physical, and it may feel as if you have nothing to say. But feel how your breath is suggesting, just like radar, how you are existing in a moment of being. As one becomes aware of the intelligence that does not need anything, a profound silence will make them still, and in that stillness, an aspect of their being will come forth where their idea will consciously receive such a greater idea that it will see it is beyond ideas, and so direct experience becomes actualized. As direct experience becomes actualized, the projection of the being is, in a sense, never there. So you become free, for you know that you are in the world, but not of it. That consciousness can bring many worlds into one moment, but it's still beyond it. For that is the nature of activity. Evolution begins when we acknowledge a dynamic state of being. Consciousness begins when through to a static state of consciousness. It doesn't have to be static, but to any state of being, you kind of become aware of how existence is here within you. And of course, there needs to be calibration. Do not seek some kind of realization that you just become like a Buddha figure. The Buddha figures of the future must immediately receive that understanding, find themselves present, become coordinated through their knowing, and how they work through abstraction is by trusting every moment. And so their moment gets a glow. As your moment gets a glow, it's because you are putting more attention on yourself, and you begin to see that this concept Mr. Within talks about divine attention. It is your divine attention. Your greater aspects of existential intelligence are now aligning with your individual consciousness, for the individuality is seeing that it is not individual. The minute you see you are not alone, you could never be. For the understanding is rooted beyond space and time. And men have tried to get their hands dirty, but they have to realize it's not about physically finding the soil and touching it, touching the roots. It's by knowing it's there and letting it be, and working with the knowing that we are within, which is the knowing of the cosmos. It is now time for many lions in sheep's clothing to roar in a manner that existence wakes up. Do not be a savior of a world which is just much of a passenger as you are here. Directly acknowledge how experience is present, and let the journey of life dissolve into the beauty of the afterglow. Much blessings. This plane of existence is a platform, but your sense of being is beyond the platform. Om Namah Shivaya. Much blessings and namaste.